Buongiorno.
Good morning again. We are back from Xilexpo Arena 2022. So the biannual exhibition for woodworking technology and furniture supplies. Quiz that allow us to show you how an exhibition event works. And today we have Today we are dedicating the morning session to doors and windows, which are crucial elements in order to ensure the well-being in our places, be it a home, a factory, a workshop. So they provide an important level of comfort that makes our lives better. Today we're going to talk about doors and windows wood frames, and we're going to determine whether they are well made or not well made. There is a new standard, a new UNI standard, and have invited Franco Bulian, who is the director of Catas, which is the most important laboratory for wood testing, wood grading, and so he has direct experience with doors and windows wood frames. And then we have another guest, Stefano Ambrosi, who is a technical consultant who is widely renowned. Some people we have invited don't want to miss his contribution specifically. Welcome to Xilexpo 2022. Please tell us something about this new UNI 11717. Franco Bulian, yours is the floor. Thank you, Luca Rossetti. Once again, I will brief you on the history behind the development of this new standard. Where does it come from? What is the background that led us to write and devise this new standard? And let me start by showing you some evocative images that have to do with wood and wood construction. This is in recent years, wood, timber has been rediscovered as a material that is important for construction. This is a picture taken in Milan, nearby Piazza Gai Aulento. This is a modern timber structure that uses an antique type of raw material, timber, which has been rediscovered and valued again for several reasons that I'm going to talk to you about in a short time. This is, again, another project in the former Rizzoli area or district in Milan. For new areas, we have co-working areas that are now very much popular, spaces dedicated to exhibitions, events, and as you can see from these pictures, wood and timber really play the major role here. There is a very strong bond towards an attraction towards this new natural material. This is the new airport in Zurich, and once again, let me stress this point. Timber, wood is really considered as a basic, key and fundamental material for the most renowned architects, the so-called archi-stars. And it is a material for the future too. Why are we going back to wood and timber? Wood is certainly a sustainable raw material, and I will not dwell too much on these concepts of sustainability because we already addressed them at length in the past few days, and we are going to talk about sustainability of wood again today towards the end of the day with the award, the Innovation Award. Wood can be utilized but can also be planted so that our sons, our daughters and our grandchildren can carry on using it. So since the buzzword of the day is sustainability, wood is indeed sustainable by definition. There is also another aspect that led us to rediscover the importance and relevance of wood. And this is the fact that wood can be replanted, can be utilized in the future, but wood is twice as much sustainable because as it grows, it absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere, and therefore wood besides the so-called greenhouse effect, which is bringing about climate change and all the disruption and disruptive environmental phenomena that we are going through in recent times, flooding, droughts, and so on and so forth. So when wood grows, wood absorbs or takes the CO2 from the atmosphere, and it is the one and only type of material that improves the environment with its utilization. And I don't think there is any other raw materials that can really boast such a double sustainability. So wood is a material from the past for the future. And let's look at what happens in the industry of doors and window frames. One might say, I imagine there will be so many doors and windows made of wood in the future. This is a market trend depicted in this chart, of course a general trend, and currently we are recording a growth trend, and the growth will be boosted by the fiscal incentives that the government has approved and released. So there is a lot of renovation and restructuring projects that are now being carried out in it. So there is a doors and windows market that is growing. Wood is the raw material of the future, and let's now look at what happens in terms of market share for wood. But this, this graph clashes with what we have just stated. In the first years of the 21st century, we had a market share around maybe 50% for wood. Now it's a half. PVC, aluminium doors and windows are constant. PVC is growing amazingly, I would say, at the expense of wood, of timber. So this slide is also pretty meaningful. In the course of 10 years, from 2012 to 2022, the trend has reversed. The growth of PVC and aluminium has continued steadily, whereas the market share of aluminium went back, whereas PVC went from 26% to 38%, and wood conversely from 39% to 26%. Why is plastic then moving so fast and forward? It should be the contrary, it should be the opposite. So there are two main reasons. One reason may be related to costs. But Stefano, my friend sitting next to me, just told me that in very recent times, with the energy cost increase, there is almost an overlapping of costs, and cost is no longer an item as it used to be. The main reason behind this trend is another one. So the idea that a wooden-made door frame or window frame unfortunately doesn't last long, and we do have examples of this. We can see them every day. This is a pretty peculiar picture. I will not identify the guilty person here, but a few years ago, before COVID, I was invited by a company to attend a one-day workshop dedicated to wood-made doors and windows against the PVC-made doors and windows. And this was the room where the meeting was being held. So, and we have many examples. This is a hotel where I stayed a couple of years ago for my holidays, Christmas holidays in northern Italy, and their doors and windows were really catastrophic. Very nice hotel, wonderful people, excellent service, but I don't know, my critical eye soon caught this defect. And these are other examples of places where I've been, in Bozen, this is a frame made of PDF. As soon as it gets wet, it just gets swollen. So there is a lack of culture in making doors and windows with wood, if these are the results we have to cope with. And unfortunately, these results then become part of the collective imagery of buyers. So why is the market share of PVC-made doors and window frames increasing against the wood ones? Because the idea is that wood is not a suitable raw material to be used for external environment, for outdoor environment. So, but on the other hand, there is another fact that we have to come to terms with. If we look at the Italian market especially, if we look at wood doors and windows, one might wonder, are there any regulations, certifications, guidelines? No, there aren't. Up until 2 years ago, there was nothing of this kind in Italy. So how can you make a well-made wood door or window? Well, by experience, by tradition. I can make it well because it's me and I can work well and I'm good at doing it. So there was and there still is a lack of rules and regulations when you go about making a wood-made door or window. On the contrary, PVC started to come out and release, guidelines from the very early stage. I will show you some guidelines in French, in France, in India. In India, they have a set of regulations on how to make good PVC doors and window frames. This is a certification, the RAL PVC certification for doors and windows. This is a German institute which has recognized the Catas on their website. They also included an image of Catas laboratory. So the PVC doors and windows industry has always paid a lot of attention to these aspects, tests, certification, guidelines, which is something that conversely the wood industry hasn't paid attention to from the very beginning. This is a piece of PVC frame where you can even see the reference standard, the European standard, stamped on it. This is something that is still missing in the wood industry, and possibly, but maybe more than possibly, this somehow contributed to sort of elevate the image of PVC wood and frame, a PVC door and window frame versus the wood ones. So here we have looked at we have become part of the Italian UNI organization. That's the Italian standardization organization. The first name on the top left-hand side, it's myself, Bulian Franco. The second one is Stefano Ambrosi, and that's the reason why he's here today. I wanted Stefano to be here because he really believes in the value and quality of these tests. He devoted his heart and soul to these standards. I know Franco Bulian is here with us. He greatly contributed to the release of this standard. And Stefano is going to illustrate the contents of the standard. The standard helps us define the minimum requirements that should lead and guide the doors and window producers and manufacturers to make a compliant, good and valuable, well-made frame. According to the panel of experts listed earlier in the slide, Stefano will provide you with the details of this standard. However, there is part 2 of the standard which addresses aluminium-made frames for external use. It's been a great opportunity to conduct great work. It was also hard to accomplish it. We completed it, we made it, and I think the results will be helpful to reverse the trend of the wood market share used for doors and windows, because it really deserves it. This material deserves it. Let me finish with this image. Somebody says, well, wood doesn't last long outdoor. Well, this is the patriarch olive tree. It is in Sardinia. It is more than 500 years old. So if wood is well managed, I think it can really last more than a few years. And let me finish with a quote by Alessandro Manzoni, an Italian writer. So working without rules and regulations is the most demanding and difficult job of the world. So that's the reason why we do need regulations and rules, and I think I'm done with my contribution now.
Stefano, what can we add? Well, we're going to delve into it. So let's see what rules do we have to cope with in order to make a well-crafted wooden window frame. Wood does last long. Our monumental churches that were built some 1,000 years ago still boast their wooden doors and windows, so they are centuries old. So you can do well with working with wood. I recently read an article, nothing to do with doors and windows, but it talks about the life of a tree. And it would seem that trees were not programmed like us humans to have an end. It's true that trees do decay, do die, but that's an accidental effect. That DNA does not want them to stop living. And it's quite interesting, so it makes us understand that wood, if used well, can be an eternal, perennial material. And this is something I liked a lot. And again, I'm entertaining you while waiting for the presentation. On occasion of the latest wedding anniversary with my mother, I gave her a very small olive tree, and I told her, look, this is forever. This is the title of the standard. You're expert. I'm going to introduce myself first. My name's Stefano Ambrosi. I'm 56 years old, married, 3 children, and I've been married for quite a while, actually. And after some experiences in the chemical industry, I started developing painting products. And I started working as a consultant for major industries and to work on developing a product that could protect wood as best as possible, so that wood can last. And I also worked as a technical consultant on a number of boards and especially on the practical sides for certain solutions. Well, let's start. So if you deal with windows, let's not get confused. The performance standard, so the EC marking, that's something different. So we're not even going to talk about the EU regulation for construction products or DOP declaration of performance. All these things are already standardized, regulated. So it's things that window makers know well about. We're going to talk about this. So regardless of the type of material used, in this case today, we are only going to talk about wooden windows and doors, so made of wood. So wood is a natural material containing this material. So we're going to talk about how we want to have a manufacture last long, even though it is constructed with a material that is meant to last. But when this material, like wood, is reduced to a window, so it's dried material, life no longer flows into it, external agents interact, and they decay the material, and decay in an ongoing and endless process. The material can be attacked by weather agents like sun, but for this same region, the great benefits are that it is a renewable material. Let's not go into talking about sustainability, but we can talk about the most important data for us today, which is the environmental impact of a wooden door or window. So carbon dioxide, greenhouse effect. When you choose, even when making personal choices, when you choose a wooden object, can be a cutter, a window, you're actually lowering the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and you're going to create a better world for your children and grandchildren. And this should accompany us, besides creating very beautiful elements. When we were saying that wood can last for a very long time, even when it is transformed into a window, we do have examples, monuments, historical artifacts, churches that were built during the Renaissance period. They still have their original windows that are exposed to the outdoor agents. They're as nice as the first day they were created. So you can create things that can last and can last in time. Of course, not everything ends up well. Like in this case, whoever realized these big windows ended up having windows that in just a few years had their paint coating, and the film was decayed. So research started looking into the reason why some experiences are very positive, whereas other experiences are extremely negative. Well, the first reason is exactly a cultural reason. Door and window producers have always been, over time, have been making more and more beautiful items, more and more performing items, waterproof, impermeable to sun. But this is the full window, so internal housing climate, very comfortable, but they neglected something. They neglected how this engineering work of art could ensure durability over time while being beautiful and functional at the same time. So we do have modern elements that are robust, but at the same time the market has highlighted some limits, so a reduced durability in time. Actually, Europe had already tried to do something, and one of the elements that Europe, from the very beginning, decided to give rules for the whole market was in this area, so identify how wood for doors and windows should be made, how it should be assembled, because it's different. And so this is the EU regulation, EN 14220, and here every single country could enter, actually they had to enter, the characteristics or features of wood for doors and windows made for their own internal countries. Nice, don't you think so? For the first time, Europe was giving each and every country the possibility of having their own national rules in the, implemented in the European rule. Germany, VFF, Verband der Fenster- und Fassadenhersteller. It's the association of German door and window makers. And this association in Germany approves wood species, develops new systems, performs tests, and approves paints for doors and windows. In Germany, they had already given themselves their own rules and regulations for wood species and rules for the requirements of painting systems for windows and doors. So Germany was ahead of all other European countries for whoever wanted to make a well-done window door. And actually, as part of that regulation, and this is how a door or window has to be built in Germany for windows, for doors, cracks, fissures. Everything was defined in Germany. Of course, the EU regulation applies to all countries, EU countries. What about Italy? There you go. The EU regulation translated into Italian. And this is the Italian page for it. We have the Italian page, which is blank. So doors and windows in Italy can be built as you like. You can scrap wood, healthy wood, or rotten timber, whatever you like. This is the story of regulations in Italy. We haven't been paying attention to this field, but we know, each one of us, in 2022, we can design and build a door or a window the same as 20 years ago, including when choosing chemicals or the installation process. The problem is that up until yesterday, we didn't have the requirements, even though manufacturer wanted to do things well, they couldn't because they didn't have a guideline, they didn't have parameters to follow. So there you go, in 2015, as Franco already mentioned, not just the Italian standardization body, but Federlegno Arredo, CNA. So this work group was set up that eventually published this regulation that was published in June 2018. And actually this regulation has been available for 4 years now. There you go, 34 pages. It's not compulsory, mandatory, but this year, however, an endless series of disputes that have also involved me personally, because nowadays when you have a window showing limitations in terms of durability, when you see there's a premature decay, any judge, any court nowadays appointing an expert, a court-appointed expert, so the first action is to look for applicable rules and regulations, and today we do have it, exactly the regulation that we're talking about. So today we're looking at windows that were ill-built, but maybe after 2018, when the standard was not mandatory yet. But today there can be a financial fallout if you don't comply with this regulation. Now we're going to just focus on a few significant points. So preamble in terms of philosophical and financial reasons why we're here. Let's talk about the standard. So we understand the purpose very well. The purpose of this standard is to identify the features of raw materials. So we're talking about wood, paints, gaskets, and finished products. So the whole window that affect the decay of wooden supports. We talk about painting cycles for wooden doors and windows, and we identify the painting cycles that are good for doors and windows to be used outdoors. So this does not apply to indoor doors. So it does not, and it does not apply to doors and windows that are built of materials other than wood. It does not apply to garage wooden doors, and does not apply to mixed materials doors and windows. This applies to wooden doors and windows, so made of wood. So general info. So you have 6 determining factors. This is the Bible that we have to talk about. So the decay of a window depends on the wood you're gonna use. It can also be a panel when you doing blinds, shutters. It depends on the characteristics of the design, the construction, the perimeter joints of the door. So how the frame is joined to the door, and then the superficial finishings or treatments for preparing the support, sanding. If you don't prepare wood, avoiding those micro creaks, micro grooves before painting, the paint is not going to last. And then treatment in terms of superficial protection, the painting process or coating process itself. It depends on conditions of exposure. I mean, is the window very exposed, partially protected from weather agents? So the 6 elements: support, treatment, exposure, sanding, design. So these 6 big families are then identified into criteria and levels of acceptability. And this actually gives a guideline about numbers and about what must be done in order to build a well-crafted window. For instance, this is a table for wooden supports. You have criteria here, for instance, how wood has to be naturally durable. So we're talking about the wooden species you select for making a window. How is this wooden species able to defend itself from the attack of pathogens, fungi? There are regulations, regulatory references, but the standard also defines what resin holds, the type of cutting. I mean, all characteristics giving numbers, like design characteristics as well. For instance, the curving ray, and we're talking about design here, for wooden edges. For instance, there are studies about when two surfaces, the curving ray determines the perfect coating of paint. If I have 2 surfaces forming a cutting edge less than 3 millimeters, for a physical reason, paint will never be able to coat them uniformly, and that edge that is exposed, sharp edge that is exposed to weather agents, will never last if it's not coated and painted well. And so we give an exact number here about what has to be done. The same for in tilting angles. Different parameters, you can see them rolling. So superficial treatment, so sanding, and all criteria parameter for painting, resins, additives, creating a solid film that must protect wood. So what does this film has to do and have in terms of moisture or other elements, and then exposure to weather agents. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, when we talk about wooden supports, we have here a table that is available in international rules and regulations. If you make a wooden window using beech rather than larch, the result in terms of durability will be different. So if you do, I mean, poplar or hemlock, I mean, so when we talk about softwood or hardwood, we give different indications on how to choose wood or the wood species. If you do not follow these guidelines, the result is this, my friends. It's a result where nature makes the work of decaying that window. So if we know what lies ahead, we have to do things to avoid these occurring. There are resin pockets, and these are part of nature, a part of wood. We only have to avoid these resin pockets. Taking wood does contain resin. Wood containing resin is extremely durable. So nature puts some natural substances in the core of the trunk, the core of the tree, exactly to protect that tree from the attack of insects or fungi. And resin is the balm, helping wood to repair when there are wears and tears, like when wind, the action of wind can somehow ruin the tree, the wood of the tree, and resin is what does the work of repairing that crack. But that resin was very beneficial when the wood was a tree. It becomes unbeneficial when the wood becomes a window, because this natural cream, this balm resin, contains trementine, which is a diluent that is able to make a hole in the paint, and then water penetrates these holes through paint and enters wood. So at one point we have to understand what trees, what wooden species we're talking about. We have to understand what happens when we switch from a live tree to dead wood.
And the same applies to cracks and cuts. Whenever we find a crack in the wood, the regulation tells us how to fill it, how to bridge the gap, because we will find like a breakage in the wood, and we need to make up for it. These are some examples of knots, and once again, whenever we are faced with a knot on the table, we will only be able to see the cross-section of the knot. But in an alive tree, the knot used to be a branch, which goes from the inner part of the trunk towards the outside. And for the entire length, this knot creates an intersection. So near the knot, the tree puts some balm again, some resins, and so we will have resin and resin pockets in the trunk, in the board extracted from the trunk. So we will have to remove that part and place a new piece of wood. Unless we do that, no surface treatment will be durable, will be able to last over time. You may say that this is pretty banal, these are common sense rules. We need to manage something that was functional in an alive setting, and we will have to learn how to manage it on the element that will then be used for our window. And we need to coat the wood with a durable durable film. It all sounds simple, but then unfortunately the regulations table do not have any prescriptions for that, and unfortunately some manufacturers haven't taken this into consideration. However, nowadays, if we have a wood frame or window frame that it's marketed, we will know that it will not last forever. But whoever produced that door or window frame will have to compensate for the restoration costs, because we do have a regulation, a standard nowadays that establishes its minimum technical requirements. We also know that the choice of the type of wood is key to external durability. So the difference between a door frame and a pullover is this one. So the utilization horizon for a door or a window frame is 25 years. It has been established that after 25 years, technology innovation will lead us to replace that frame, even if it is still functionally sustainable or durable. So we have to cover a span of time of 25 years, and the choice, the selection of the cutting type will have to be matched with this time frame. And also stuccos applied to wood will have to be considered appropriately, because they can determine the duration of the wood externally. So the standard provides us with indications in this respect and how this must be treated, because all these requirements determine the duration of the frame. So it's important to choose the right wood species, the cut type, the type of stucco, but also how we build, how we make a door frame or wood frame. And door and window manufacturers will find the basic characteristics in the standard, so that the frame allows water to flow out and allows paint to spread properly and coat the frame properly. The standard is provided with sketches, with designs, descriptions, so that by going through it, everybody can get a full understanding of what we're talking about. And the third weak point are the perimeter joints of the door frame. The regulation the standard sets requirements for that too, as well as for the surface treatment, how to sand it, how to prepare it, and how to make it suitable for coating with the paint. So the choice, the selection of the wood species, of the wood support is a simple one for a manufacturer, because it's a technical choice. As long as you provide instructions and requirements, the choice will be appropriate. As far as chemistry is concerned, there are different considerations. So the different considerations. Surface treatment is different. So the performance of a paint of coating can be seen once it has been applied on the wood to the wood frame, and when it is exposed externally. So if you get this choice wrong, anything you've done properly before that will be nullified. You may have spent thousands of euros to choose and buy the best wood, but then you make the wrong choice from a chemical perspective, then all you've done previously is worthless. For this reason, the standard devotes a lot of space, if you want, to the parameters relating to resistance to degradation. Look at how many requirements are listed. For example, how a film must protect the wood support from sun exposure. So the paint film must have a mirror-like reflection property. How is this film tested once it is applied through natural aging? And there is a specific test to determine that, and if it is passed, then it can be authorized and approved. The standard addresses all these aspects and provides criteria to be met. For example, light transmittance through the coat film. We know that when light goes through paint and penetrates wood, then we have a much quicker degradation phenomena. Every manufacturer knows that a lacquered frame will last longer than a walnut frame that it's simply painted. So if we look at the back of the paint film, we find small parts of wood. The wood had degraded through sun energy. There was some disgregation, and this led to paint detachment. So this is how ultraviolet rays can penetrate paint and wood. There are some specific requirements. Light transmittance must be lower than 1% for high energy rays and maximum 5% for strong rays, but a little bit less than ultraviolet rays. If you choose the wrong protection coating, this is what happens, that the sun penetrates through the film, degrades the support, and then the paint comes off very simply. Then we can talk about level of matte. For example, if we look at natural aging, everybody sees that any biological material, including our skin, human skin, all these materials, biological materials, age. We just have the option to select protection treatment that have been tested for aging, for natural aging and artificial aging, so that then they can be classified as suitable for this use. So these tests are exposed for 12 months. So if the test samples are working properly, then the wood frame will work well for a period of time that it's at least 4 times as longer as the natural one. Look at the difference between a good paint and a non-good paint or a not good coating. The manufacturer of the part at the bottom is thinking that he is applying a durable coating, and he sold the window to one of you, and when you collect it from the shop, it looked great. Well, the difference between the two pieces is that 4 years later or 5 years later, you will be faced with a completely damaged window frame or a still perfect window frame. Another parameter is water permeability. We know that wood absorbs moisture, and when it does so, it may develop fungi that deteriorate wood. Paint coating serves the purpose of protecting wood from water absorption. There are tests to verify this performance. If the paint adhesion to wood is not very well done, both when dry and wet, the paint film detach, they come off, just like the snake loses its skin. When it was sold, it was perfect, this window frame. However, the manufacturer was, let's say, tricked by whoever sold him a paint coating that was not meant for this purpose. That's why we have established a standard that helps paint users, coating manufacturers to develop paints that are suitable to protect a durable artifact. once again, there are mechanical or machine-based tests that need to be passed according to the standard. And the same goes for air bubbles. As part of the film, there could be these air bubbles that may end up having a great impact on the wood. How do we measure them? A very banal tool, a microscope, with 20 times enlargement options. If you look at the windows at your place with a magnifying lens, you can find a very compact film coat on the left, or you can spot these air bubbles. When you see these bubbles, you should imagine that the coating film on your window is like that famous hole characterized cheese. It can never last for 20 years. Moisture enters in large amounts. The coating film is not compact, and so it will soon decay. So also artificial aging is tested in order to approve the paint as a suitable paint for external use. We have machines. They are called QUV test, and paint is tested for longer than 2,000 hours. You can see the difference between painting products that work well versus unsuccessful ones. And whenever you buy a door or a window frame, you cannot see all these things. And up until today, not even the manufacturers would be able to see that. But nowadays, with the standard, the tests and machines can verify all these requirements ahead of time. Then there is a reflection stability, so the matte look will not change over time. Color stability is also addressed by the standard. In lacquered products that you buy for your home windows, you may experience some change in colors over time. Changes in color are also disciplined by a regulation which indicates maximum scope of change. Scale number 3 identifies the maximum range of color change. You may experience a visible change after a few years that it's tolerated. This is still accepted, whereas something that it's not good at all is what we normally experience in real life. So I've just given you some ideas about the amount of parameters that are actually included in the standard. I was told to speed up, so I'm kind of approaching the conclusion of my contribution at a faster pace. Compliance of paint is released when all parameters are met, all criteria are met. I mean, we're talking about 25 years of duration of a door or window frame that it's built with and made with a biological material. So we need to be careful. Nowadays, we have machines that are able to measure the quality of a paint coat, and they can measure the quality and durability of an outdoor paint coat. This commission, this panel of experts has been working for 3 years to come up with a set of minimum parameters beyond which the product can function properly. This is again the list of the parameters that will ensure year-long protection of our window frame. Exposure conditions. Of course, if the wood frame is exposed to south, southwest, it's a severe exposure. So exposure to west and south are more severe, more impactful. And so in those cases, some parameters are stricter than stricter, for example, in terms of light transmittance. And then the inclination of a door or a window frame that can be exposed to different stresses. Local climate, wood frame that is installed in a house in Palermo will suffer less stress or a different stress than a door frame installed in Venice or Turin. So as a matter of fact, the exposure conditions will not only just depend on the climate, but also on the protection degree offered by the building itself. And so there are the three categories: bland, moderate, and severe, mild, moderate, and severe. So I've just had, in these 30 minutes of time that were assigned to me, I tried to help you understand how the panel of experts made all possible efforts to really deliver the best possible result in terms of necessary requirements to have a long-lasting door or window frame. We have, for example, specific criteria for exposure conditions, specific criteria. Of course, the finished product also must meet some criteria. It's not enough if you've selected the best paint. You also need to apply the right amount of it. You need to apply the right thickness of it. You need to use the right application machines to prevent air bubbles. Of course, a detailed analysis of the standard would deserve an entire day of explanations, but I'm sure you've gotten the flavor of how complex these choices are. Some characteristics cannot be seen in the paint liquid, the fluid, and the performance level that is expected is a very high one, and some manufacturers aim at meeting these requirements, and paint for door and window frames must be a special one. It's a selected one and needs to be capable to protect the frames outdoor too. The choice of a door or window frame is a responsibility of the construction site direction, and so they are, the construction site directors are expected to measure their compliance with the various standard regulations, to guidelines, to the standard of the degradation criteria. So the construction site director, as well as the design planner, are expected to perform their roles. But the ultimate responsibility lies with the manufacturer or with the trade force, the commercial department of the door and window frames. So whoever markets a product then takes on the responsibility for its faults and defects. I'd like to finish my contribution, close my contribution with this statement. Manufacturing and selling wood frames represents a win-win choice or the medium range. A wood-made frame is nice, is amazing. The market would like to use materials that copy wood. They put like films on PVC in order for PVC to resemble wood. Everybody would like to have a wood-made frame. It means warmth, nature, sustainability, environmental friendliness. We just fear that this choice is not a durable one. But nowadays we have the tools, we have the means to make it last. And it is also possible to make it in the right and good way. It is possible, not only, it is also necessary. Thank you, Stefano. I have a couple of very quick questions. Maybe we can take some questions from the audience too. Just give me some quick answers. I'm led to think that maybe paint coating matters more than the frame itself, than the door and the window frame. I'm challenging you. Well, as Stefano rightly said, paint is much more complex and it's more difficult to rate, to assess paint. What we really care about here is that the door and window frame. Well done, starting from the very first choices, choosing the right wood species, the right wood. Paint doesn't solve all the problems. Paint is just an element, it's just a ring in the chain. How can good and valuable technology impact on the quality of window and door frame? Well, machines are fundamental nowadays in order to build a well-made door or a frame. Precision of modern machines allows for perfectly precise jointing of the pieces and ensuring the maximum level of protection. Let me answer to your previous question with another question. What does matter most in a car? Is it the engine or the tires? Without tires, a car would not run, but without the engine, it wouldn't move. So the same thing applies to doors and windows. It's the sum of the various factors that make it a win-win solution. So, and the only way you have to do that is to rely on certificates that the paint producers must release. So let me now recap. We've seen that the market share of wood in doors and windows is losing some points. Will this new standard help us make up for the loss of market share? Well, this is wishful thinking. I'm confident that this will happen in the long term. I have a more optimistic view. Compliance with the standard requirements will also bring about a very strong communication effort by the manufacturer of the doors and windows manufacturers so that they can issue warranties. That's the only way to push the market towards use of wood. We have chemical and scientific supports and requirements that need to be met, and the market will follow suit. We could spend another couple of hours on this topic, but we unfortunately don't have the time to do that.